This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. This week, as we just can't contain our excitement for Space Marine 2, we're looking back at the OG 2011 Space Marine.
Yeah, it's funny how the Ork Weapons and armor make the incredibly chunky industrial design of the Space Marine stuff look slick and uncluttered.
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the upcoming Space Marine 2 episode, and let us know what other games or guns you'd like to see featured on the series in the comments section below. Right, over to Jonathan.
If you're going to have an oversized pistol, it should have an oversized sound, which that does. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. Couldn't these guys one-hand a normal bolt gun?
Why could.
Still?
Because it costs more points to take a bolter than it does to take a bolt pistol. That's probably the reason. And I think to be cool enough to hold a bolter in one hand, you have to be like a named character.
If you check out Matt Easton's channel, Scholar Gladiatoria, he's got a number of videos on especially colonial warfare, where you have officers with a handgun, pistol in one hand, a revolver, and a sword in the other. Like, part of the idea of the one-handed firearm is that you can use your other hand for other stuff. So there's your historical relevance. And I guess even these augmented dudes, it's maybe a bit more wieldy as a pistol-sized weapon. I suppose there's something to do with the visuals of swinging around a giant, like a carbine equivalent in one hand. It's going to look a bit weird, whereas a smaller, like half size or whatever it is, gun using the same technology, just, I don't know. We expect to see pistols fired in one hand, don't we? So it fits the bill there. Now, practically speaking, something that differentiates the pistol from the full-size bolt guns, barrel's almost non-existent on the pistols because the magazine goes in front of the grip, so there is barely any room for a barrel. Now maybe this is where your rocket assist comes in, I don't know.
Space Marine.
The .998, so that's the caliber, that .998 of an inch, that's very, very precise. Godwin pattern bolter. Characteristic Space Marine battle rifle. So I like a bit of detail. I like the ludicrously precise caliber there. The fact that Imperial, appropriately, is still being used to measure the caliber of firearms 40,000 years in the future. Looks like metric may have lost the battle there. The design, I think, is modernized somewhat. It's got a sort of ergonomic looking grip to it that I don't remember being on the early Warhammer designs. Still big, still chunky, makes a racket, chucks out giant cartridge cases, but is still rocket-assisted projectile. See the cases come flying out of the ejection port, smoke from the muzzle, nice muzzle flash. It's all looking good, actually. And I think they should be that chunky. You look at the armor, which hasn't substantially changed, and I don't think they should be streamlining the weapons. They should be massive and industrial.
Well, this variant of bolter, the Godwin pattern, that's the one that they say, like the Space Marine scale one. That's the one that said if a normal person was to shoot it, it would just destroy them and kill them. Like a normal human can't handle the recoil, which again is very grimdark and 40k, and I love it.
Yeah, because I'm always, whenever I'm thinking about bolters, I'm thinking how much of it is propellant and how much of it's rocket fuel. And if the recoil is supposedly so strong that it's going to shatter your arm or something, then there's a ton of propellant involved there. But I guess the answer is they're just extremely powerful. They've got all of the recoil of a giant gun, and then the projectiles are accelerated to some sort of insane velocity as well, I guess, making them the ultimate firearm in a way. No concession to a butt stock at all, which I'm sure is where the Lancer from Gears of War took its inspiration as well. The idea that we don't need no butt stock. We just use muscle power to control our rifle. The sights are kind of interesting. There's a huge blade foresight and then two sort of nubbins on the back that don't really seem to line up, nor do they ever try to aim. And Warhammer is from the 80s, so there's no aiming going on in the 80s. It's all hip firing. It's all looking over the top of the gun and aiming instinctually. Oh, hello. Some sort of emplaced. Still some sort of bolter by the look of it.
Yeah, this is the heavy bolter.
Oh, okay. And of course you just pick it up. There's some serious dispersion going on from that mounted machine gun, essentially. And there's I guess a belt box, or is it meant to be some sort of drum?
Yeah, it's usually a belt. I believe it's a belt box, just because a lot of miniatures used to have the Rambo sort of belt over the arm instead.
Replicates the staggering firepower, literally staggers you, of emplaced weapons in a form portable by a mighty space marine. Oh, I see. So you can stabilize yourself in order to fire. Oh, increase rate of fire and accuracy. Interesting. I'm not sure why that would increase the rate of fire.
The guy in red, the Blood Angel, that model actually has the backpack that's also full of ammo, so it has the whole feed from backpack to gun.
The earliest version of which I think is mid-50s, where Armalite had a backpack full of ammo attached to a belt-fed AR-10. And it was reinvented in Vietnam with the M60, and then again by some US Marines relatively recently. So people keep coming back to the ammo backpack. Stalker Bolter, equipped with targeter, scope, presumably, and high accuracy shells. Functions equally well as a precision battle rifle, so I guess a DMR, or a sniper weapon. Is there a sniper type bolter in the lore before the game?
There have been a bunch of sniper weapons. They've lent more into it with more recent versions of 40k. Around this era, the scouts usually had the sniper weapons, but Space Marine wouldn't use a scout weapon for various reasons. For this, though, the Stalker, weirdly, when I went to replay this with this footage, I started to look at the weapons differently because of the loads of episodes we've done together. And I looked at the bolter, cursed with knowledge. I looked at the bolter like an AR-15 after seeing the Stalker bolter like on SR-25. Sort of similar, ergonomics, straight magazine, designated marksman rifle.
This thing looks like a lot of fun. I mean, it's mulching enemies with a single shot. And of course, despite being some sort of sniper rifle, it still doesn't have a butt stop.
And you don't really get to use it as a sniper weapon because you'll end up in chainsawing distance, regardless of how you're playing.
They've tried, bless them. To be fair, that's how I tend to use sniper rifles in games. I use it as a high damage, not very good rifle. Storm Bolter, 2 barrels by the look of it. So it looks like we're back to belt feed, but a smaller weapon and a double barrel like that crazy double AR-15 from a few years ago that somebody made. The Cody Firearms Museum have one on display. Is it 2 barrels? I think it is.
Yeah.
It's
for all intents and purposes 2 bolters glued together down the middle.
Well, the weapon I'm failing to remember the name of is exactly that. It's a common receiver, but 2 barrels, 2 triggers, 2 magazines, all separate.
Gilboa Snake.
Gilboa Snake, thank you. I knew Boa was in there somewhere. It's nice that it tracks the contents of each side, but it's a little confusing because they seem to be feeding from a common feed source at the bottom of the weapon, i.e. the boxed belt. Maybe we're looking at 2 belts coming in the 2 sides of the 2 halves of the weapon. It's not quite clear. It's implied that bolters have an inherently low rate of fire, so the best way to increase your rate of fire is to have 2 mechanisms.
It's both weirdly like a support weapon and an SMG. Just by their use, they're either mounted on top of a tank as a pintle weapon, or they're wielded one-handed by Terminators going through tight corridors.
Well, I'm forgetting the ultimate granddaddy of double-barreled automatic weapons, Villaparosa, which was also a mounted weapon, invented as a light machine gun firing a pistol cartridge, which is weird, then immediately pivoted to an aircraft gun, so mounted on a vehicle, albeit a flying one, and then sort of in a pinch handheld and used as a submachine gun, and it's a submachine gun by virtue of being a pistol cartridge. So there's my best historical parallel to that gun, is the Villaparosa. Right, Lascannons. So we've got energy weapons, can cut through almost any armor at extreme range, which is kind of the reverse of a modern laser weapon, given that shooting through atmosphere, you get a fall off of energy over distance. It doesn't, you want a railgun or something for armor penetration at distance. Yeah, it does kind of operate more like a railgun, really, or a fictional railgun anyway. It's not bringing a beam of energy to bear over a period of time and burning through armor or anything. It's like a projectile weapon, really. Does this fit with its tabletop description in terms of is it supposed to operate like this, or have they changed things up for the game?
But in Space Marine, it's sort of like the sniper rifle or the anti-material rifle against armored enemies. Usually used against vehicles and tanks in the lore and the tabletop. And I'm sure Sod will correct me, but I believe that it's been written in a couple of different ways. Usually like this, where it's a big pulse, or it's fired and stays on as if to like burn a hole through something for a few
that's what I was
seconds,
expecting,
and then goes off.
I think instinctively I prefer the burning through a continuous beam you have to keep on target. I always enjoy that in games, and I guess being a bit of a Trekkie for my sins, I like the phaseriness of it, although phasers have been depicted in all sorts of different ways over time. So this is your sort of flamethrower analog, if I remember rightly. Scorching plume of molecularly agitated heat. Isn't that what heat is? Haven't you just said heaty heat?
To be fair, that's a good description of the Melta Gun. It's just a big sort of shotgun blast of really hot heat. I think I described it during the when we did the game Boltgun. It was like a supercharged microwave.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, it isn't really a flamethrower, is it? It's
like a super hot shotgun.
Was it originally that, or was it originally just a flamethrower in space?
It's always been. We've had flamethrowers. There's the flamer in 40K.
Oh, flamers, of course. Yeah, it's a different thing.
But the Melta Gun was designed to. It was like a superheated weapon to punch a hole through armor.
It definitely has in this game. It definitely has that incendiary effect, though. You definitely see they burst into flames when struck. Yeah, it's kind of like its own thing, really, which is cool. But it's funny because the big vented nozzle and the hose on the bottom brings one to mind of a flamethrower, but it isn't really. It throws flame, but in a roundabout way. Right, we're into the plasma weapons now. Mark III Sun Fury. That's some very Warhammer sounding nomenclature there. In
the lore, this is another sort of armor-piercing weapon, but more like anti-personnel armor rather than anti-vehicle armor.
Of course, my overly logical approach to such things makes me think, why, if you have plasma technology, why do you need projectile weapons?
I mean, a plasma pistol is, I guess, a straight upgrade to a plasma... to a bolt pistol, but in the world of 40k, they're way rarer, and they have a chance to explode in your hand and take your arm off.
Oh, I vaguely remember something about that. Yeah.
Yeah. On the tabletop, if you roll a 1, your plasma gun blows up. But it occurs in the lore as well. Someone will overheat a plasma gun and bang.
I mean, not that, in the real world, obsolete weapon technologies continue in use because they're available, easy to maintain, easy to keep fed with ammunition. We still have people using muzzle loading firearms for hunting in parts of the world just because something's presumably invented. Oh well, bolters are ultimately just guns, aren't they? High-tech guns, but still, just because someone invents an energy weapon doesn't mean that Kalashnikovs are going away, and they're probably never going away, or weapons of that basic design are within the scope of human civilization, probably always going to be around in some form. That's a bold prediction, isn't it?
A vengeance launcher.
That sounds promising.
What's a vengeance launcher? How does one weaponize vengeance?
Now that is something the Space Marines are very good at. Funnily enough, this Space Marine game was where the vengeance launcher first appeared. It wasn't in any of the lore. It wasn't in any of the models. Like, they created a new gun to suit some of the gameplay they wanted to feature. but now it is part of 40k lore and has appeared in a couple of other things, namely just video games. But I think they just wanted a sticky grenade launcher to allow you to stick grenades to orcs and make them go pop.
Slightly confusing pseudo Picatinny rail feature on the top there, which I think is just there to look interesting.
Well, what's funny is that I'm guessing they would have looked at a Milcore or something like this, or something like that when designing this.
Probably.
So it's the only weapon in the game with Picatinny that harkens back to design elements like that.
Well, we saw the trailer for Space Marine 2 with some rails and accessories, and I was a bit disappointed on behalf of old school fans. They've done without rails systems for 40,000 years. Why would they suddenly go back to them? And we can rationalize this one as some sort of cooling ribs or something, I suppose. Right, so there's a very tank girl looking pseudo Maxim machine gun there with rockets under the barrel. Complete with the checkerboard pattern used, I think, originally as some sort of visual reference on space rockets so that you can track them in the air. I think, I don't know enough, but I think that was the idea. And now there's sort of, you see them in Tank Girl, you see them in Worms games as a sort of visual language thing for this is a rocket.
So despite how weird some of the Ork weapons look, and you might think that shouldn't work, that feed goes nowhere, they all work perfectly, and there's a reason for that. If enough orcs together believe something is true, it is true. So all the orcs think that if you paint they think that red is a fast color. So now if they paint a vehicle red, it will go faster because they believe it to be true. So if they believe that their silly scrap guns work, they'll just work. There's parts of the lore where people have been like, they found an Ork gun, they couldn't get it to fire. Some of them do work normally, and this thing has been a bit memed in the Warhammer fandom. Basically, if an Orc thinks his gun will shoot and his mates think that all the guns should shoot, they're gonna shoot, regardless of how it's built.
Well, that's a very good way around things not making any sense. Yeah, it's funny how the Ork weapons and armor make the incredibly chunky industrial design of the Space Marine stuff look slick and uncluttered. Well, hope you enjoyed that. Always fun to talk Warhammer with Dave and look at some cool guns and craziness going on. As always, guys, please do check out our Royal Armouries social media channels, websites, our real museums if you're able to do so. And you might also want to check out the History of Weapons and War app, which includes us, but also a load of other historic firearms related creators. So whatever you do, come back and join us again on this series next week.